Some will apply to stay in Canada as permanent residents. Since they're already here, established and working, the added pressure put on communities is very low. Or they'll leave Canada when their temporary residency expires, reducing our population. Some temporary residents may turn to our asylum system when their visa expires as a shortcut to stay in Canada. Those claims will be analyzed and processed, and if their claim fails, they'll be sent home. Between the amount of people coming and going, we'll effectively pause population growth for the next 2 years. Then from 2027 onwards, it'll balance out and slowly start increasing again at a sustainable pace. In fact, that gets us back to the population growth path we were on before the pandemic. This pause is going to give our economy and our communities a chance to catch up with things like our plan to build millions more homes. That's not stopping, but now we'll have a little more breathing room as we build. We'll see more corporations investing in Canadian workers and youth rather than relying on cheap foreign labor. Our cap on international students is already bringing rental prices down in big cities, and as we keep that cap in place, rents will keep coming down. We're making the system work for Canadians and for newcomers, rather than for the big box stores, chain restaurants, immigration consultants, and sham colleges that exploit it. Immigration is a great thing, and we're lucky that so many people dream of coming to our country. Fulfilling that dream depends on having a good job, a decent place to live, and health care that you can access when you need it. We have to make sure our population isn't getting out ahead of those things.
See, Justin Trudeau, one of the worst communists in the world right now, possibly worse than Kim Jong-un, definitely worse than Xi Jinping. He has nothing but contempt for his own people. But he's now at the stage where he's going to reduce immigration. Now, what is Australia doing? Nothing. Australia is not doing anything at all except increasing immigration. And instead of increasing immigration from countries that are wealthy, where you have wealthy people come in with a low crime rate and less likely to commit home invasions and stabbings, and bring the money to buy more property to keep propping the property market up, now they've flipped to continuously letting in the absolute scum of the earth into Australia. And what I want to do is explain to you why immigration will not stop in Australia, why your standard of living will continue to drop, why inflation will continue to skyrocket, and why property prices will continue to increase. One, the difference between Canada and Australia is on their doorstep, Big Daddy can protect them. And that's the role the United States plays with Canada. Not because they care about the Canadian people, but because they have a vested interest in all the resources that Canada has. Australia's by itself. We're isolated. We're a long way from our security guarantor, and our security guarantor is running out of money, running out of resources. Our security guarantor's technology is outdated. Aircraft carriers don't do anything in Asia anymore, and they're basically useless. And that's based on my predictions here. Keep in mind the banner of this channel, 2022 through to 2034. That banner was placed there in 2018, 4 years before Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's not an accident. It's because geopolitics is a science, and it's easy to read the future. Australia is going to be on its own very soon, and they're preparing for that. We have a massive country on our doorstep where even John Mearsheimer recently went to Indonesia to have a chat to them. And my chat with John Mearsheimer in 2019, it was the number one issue that I raised with him. Indonesia is not going to be on they're not going to be our friends. They're not going to be on our side. And if you look at the population of Australia, we're not even a fraction the size of Indonesia's. And so what we need with such a large landmass, we need a larger population just to defend this country. And the elites are fully aware of how feminism has destroyed every aspect of Australia's, productivity. And so what we need a large population. The Australian government is also fully aware that we have such a high standard of living in Australia that they have some leverage. They have some leeway to play with. They think that it's totally okay to reduce your standard of living all the way down to, I don't know, Indonesia's, where the middle class disappears, the poor goes skyrocket, homelessness goes through the roof because they don't care about you. And they never have, and COVID should have woken you up to that. What they want is a lot of bodies that they can throw at any invasion that could possibly happen. And I'm not saying that it's going to happen anytime soon, but it could happen in the not too distant future. But you have to plan for those things a decade in advance. 2024, 2034, I predict the United States could possibly be totally kicked out of Asia. And that means that Australia needs a large population, a population comparable to the size of Brazil, perhaps. Maybe we need another 200 million people in Australia just to defend this country. And so the Australian government is starting to prepare to do that. And they don't care about your standard of living at the moment. And from their point of view, I totally get it. Why would they care about you? You don't have any guns. You can't push back. Might is right in this world that we live in, and you don't have any ability to push back against these guys. And so, therefore, what they're going to do is they're going to continue with these new scumbag immigrants that they're letting into the country. They're going to brutalize Australian society, lower your standard of living so that you're angry, and we can point at Indonesia or point at China, and you're just going to get angry and go, oh, it was them, when really it was just the circumstance of the geopolitical situation that Australia's in. And you need to suffer the consequences of that. And it's basically, the real culprits are the boomers, the alcoholic, parasitic generation that gave away our guns and our wealth and our manufacturing and everything. And Australia is going to be one of the countries that suffers the most in the Western sphere. Now, in the short term, what's going to happen? I'm gonna make some more predictions. Inflation's going to get worse. If you think the inflation that we just suffered from is bad, it is going to get far worse. 2025, inflation might stay where it is and just kick up a little bit. 2026, you are going to get punched in the face with a sledgehammer with inflation. And property prices are going to skyrocket from where they are today. If you think property prices are bad now, 2026, you're going to get hit with a sledgehammer. Homelessness is going to skyrocket out of control. You will be lucky to be handed down a mortgage from your parents and grandparents. You're going to be renting. You're going to be sharing rooms. You're going to be CEO of a company and still sharing a room. That's how bad inflation's going to be in Australia, while they continuously flood the country with more and more scumbags. This also meets the needs of the elites because they're preparing for an upcoming conflict. They need more bodies to throw in to the meat grinder that's going to happen. Two, they need to control as much of the assets as possible, right? And so how do they do that? They destroy the family unit. They separate you from your parents. They make sure that the real Aussie men like myself don't have the ability to have a house and have some kids. And so therefore we don't have a family, and they try to kill us off by reducing all of our rights so that we commit suicide, etc., so that our parents don't have anybody to give our properties to. Right now across Australia, there's so many boomers that are childless, and they have nobody to give their properties to. And where do those properties go? Those properties go into the pocket of the government, and this is part of their new up-and-coming feudal system that they're building. They need to control all of the assets. They need to separate the Australian people from the resources so that they can send the money abroad, and they need a large amount of bodies to protect it. So basically they're building a slave population comparable to any country that is a middle to lower power in the world. And Australia's power is declining. Look at the Australian dollar versus the US dollar. Um, $1, you're lucky to get 60, 50 cents US dollars. It's only getting worse. It's because the resources aren't the taxes and all the resources, and trillions of dollars are being stolen out of the Australian economy every year, and none of that is going to the Australian people due to immigrants and due to all of the problems that they're controlling. To make things even worse for you, and it's not your fault, it's just that you're in the wrong country at the wrong time. The problem is they need to control you. You don't have any guns, right? They also need to control the narrative. And so, therefore, all of these new rules around Google and social media, and you're a troll online, and you're a conspiracy theorist, and you're a bad person because you're lying to the people. So, they're going to start shutting down social media accounts that call them out. Remember during COVID, if you even typed COVID in a post anywhere, it would get censored. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and Twitter and YouTube was deleting entire channels just for writing COVID once, whether it was controversial or not. That's going to skyrocket out of control in Australia because Australians don't have freedom of speech. And if you think that North Korea is a dictatorship, or you want to talk about Cuba or China, Australia is now the communist dictatorship of the world, and your standard of living is only going to decline moving forward. So, with that said, with those predictions made, inflation's only going to get worse. Property prices are going to skyrocket again in 2026. And this is part of a cycle that's going to continue all the way through to 2034, where Australia needs maybe another 100 million people. And I don't see the Australian government stopping immigration anytime soon. Who knows? They might, but I doubt it. So, what I'm doing in the members group, you can click the link and you can become a member of this channel. It is cheap. I've made it as cheap as basically free. It's a couple of dollars. Now, in there, I have a strategy so that, and you don't have to take part. It's not financial advice, but you can keep up to date with what myself and other people in the members group are talking about. Engage in the conversation, the private conversation behind the paywall. For a couple of dollars, you can find out what we're doing and how we're preparing for 2026. Now, I'll also make a midterm sort of prediction. And right now is your opportunity with the money printing and the US dollar still dominating the system to fly out of Australia, get out of Australia, live a good life abroad before the United States prestige declines and genocides across Asia start kicking off, where they start killing any white people that happen to be walking in the street. Um, that's going to happen. It's going to be unsafe for when the United States declines in Asia. If you're a white person walking through the streets, there's a very good chance that you will be murdered just by the general population or the government in itself. But we have a safe, say, decade where you can travel abroad, avoid all of the turmoil that's happening in Australia while using the currency. And then when things start to decline majorly, you have to go back to Australia and suffer the consequences of that. And by that stage, we'll have a different strategy altogether. We have maybe a different country that we can go to, a safe haven, but we can only figure out what we're going to do in the mid to the short term to mid term. And I'd say the next decade, you have the ability to travel, live a higher standard of living abroad. And then when the United States aircraft carriers get kicked out of Asia, you have no choice but to go back to a Western country with as many white people as possible where you're safe, because that's when the genocides will start happening. So I recommend you guys join the members group. And anyway, with that positive note, I'll see you guys in the next video.